It's the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. For more on the Seminoles, including Osceola's coverage from veteran Seminole insiders, message boards, Osceola virtual happy hours, and more, go to theosceola.com.
Hello and welcome to the first Osceola Seminole Sidelines podcast of the 2021 football season, which is presented by Alumni Hall, where you will find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family. Please visit Alumni Hall at alumnihall.com or at their Tallahassee store location at 1817 Thomasville Road. My name is Pat Burnham. I'm a football writer for the Osceola and host of Seminole Sidelines. I will be joined today by Osceola publisher Jerry Cutts, managing editor Bob Ferrante, recruiting analyst Charles Fishbein, and Osceola football analyst and former FSU offensive lineman Mark Salva. We will talk about fall camp. We will review fall camp. We will also preview Notre Dame and catch up with Fish on what's going on the recruiting front. But before we get started, I want to remind Osceola subscribers that you can log on to the Osceola and click on the Alumni Hall ad to receive a 20% discount code for online purchases and to sign up for your membership card, which you can present for in-store purchases when you're in town for the game. All right, guys, it is finally here, the start of the 2021 football season. FSU is 4 days out from, at the time of this taping of this podcast, from taking on 7th-ranked Notre Dame in the season opener in Doak Campbell Stadium. And I think probably I can speak for all of us on this point. We are very excited about the fact that we are going to get to see a true game day atmosphere in Doak Campbell Stadium for the first time since November, when they took on November of 2019, when they took on Miami in the early part of November. Should be close to a sellout stadium at night with a highly ranked opponent. It'll be the first time for a lot of Florida State coaches and players to play in front of a full stadium at Doak Campbell. So cannot imagine what those guys will be feeling as they take the field on Sunday night. But guys, we've been at camp all fall, all August long. I'm going to put us, and we'll see how we've done with camp. I'm going to put us on our own 2-minute drill. Mark, myself, Jerry, and Fish have a tendency to be wordy. Bob's always been a little bit more efficient with his time in the show, so I'm not so much worried about him. But Bob, I am going to let you set the example for all four of us.
Wait a second. I can be pithy.
See, there it goes. But Bob, I want you to kind of just give us a little bit of your top takeaways from fall camp 2021 as FSU heads into Notre Dame.
I think the biggest thing going in this year was we wanted to see a team on the field that would be competitive in 11 games, not including Clemson. And what have we seen throughout camp? We've seen some really good competition and depth building. To Jerry's point, it's not 1990s depth. It's not 1990s quality dudes across all the position groups, but we're seeing a better team at the luxury of Mike Norvell opening up so many practices. We're seeing a better team on the field. We're seeing Andrew Parchment from practice 1 to practice whatever, say Wednesday morning. You can tell his growth, for example. You can see how comfortable Keyshawn Helton is. You can see the running backs, the depth of the defensive backs. We can tell that's going to be a true strength of the defense. Still have a lot of questions. Can you really analyze the offensive line and defensive line? Because we haven't seen scrimmages. We haven't seen them in a big game situation. Just not going to know until they play in Notre Dame. You're not going to know how they can defend Notre Dame's run game, for example. Lots of big question marks. But I think you feel better overall about certain position groups. You see certain guys who you think they can deliver, they can be productive. So lots of questions still, but I think you feel overall, I think cautiously optimistic about where this program's going.
Jerry, obviously you've been out at practice a lot. Kind of what are your key takeaways from fall camp?
Well, we've improved. I did it in 2 minutes.
Well, you got to be a little bit more detailed than that.
See, I can be brief.
You can.
I think that's the key. We've improved. I think we've improved at every position. I stole the idea of dudes and guys, just guys from Fishbein. That's his term. I stole it, and because it fits. I think that when you looked at our team last year, we were just a lot of guys. and there weren't many dudes, NFL-type guys on the field. I think this year, some of those guys have grown into dudes. I think Dennis Briggs has become a dude, and we've seen that at a number of positions. To Bob's point, you see some guys like a Keyshawn Helton. He's not going to be the size the NFL wants, but he's improved. He's, healthy. He's very confident, comfortable. He's a better version of himself than he was last year. You keep hearing Mike Norvell say that. So to be real brief, I went into the spring really, really, really worried about our defensive front in terms of depth and in terms of quality. And I stand here today very confident that we're better. Now, are we going to be good against Notre Dame? Good enough against Notre Dame? That's a real test. Gave up 383 yards last year. But what I see from Briggs, Cooper, and four other guys, there's some kids there like Farmer who's really stepped up. Even Jackson, who came in from Louisville, can give us some quality reps. So I like the interior too better than I did coming into the year. And then we got the addition of the linebackers. We were pretty light at linebacker. And I think DJ Lundy has really made a statement. I think before his career's over, he's going to be a dude. Yeah. And Cortez Andrews has really given you a punch in the middle that you're going to need against a team like Notre Dame.
All right, well, we have to throw a flag on you because you took more than 2 minutes, and we're going to go through the depth.
Well, I had a false start. To begin with.
Delay a game. Now, hey, Mark, obviously you were at one practice. I know you can't talk about what you saw schematically, but you can talk individually about players and about what you saw from position groups. So kind of what were your takeaways? And you actually did see a scrimmage. So you saw a little bit more than we've seen in one practice. So what were your thoughts coming out of that scrimmage as far as individuals and position groups, not schematically?
Yeah, no, you put everything into context. I think about where this program has been the last several years and the product we've had on the field. And, the result of that product is how the guys that we have, but also how we practice, how we prepare, how we're coached. And, you throw in a new staff last year with COVID and all that went on there and the limited time that they had. What I wanted to see is for lack of a better term, a professional operation. I wanted to see coaches coaching, players competing. I wanted to see, mistakes not let go and being corrected. I wanted to see intensity. I wanted to see all of that. I wanted it to feel like these guys are working and that they're making progress. And I saw that in bunches, that night. I saw coaches getting after it. I saw our head coach really getting after it, right?
Yeah, and he's an intense dude.
And that's what you need. And so for me, just looking at the big picture and looking at the context of everything, we got to be better. Having 20 days under this regime plus fall camp, working at that pace and that intensity. Oh, by the way, we've improved in a lot of positions personnel-wise. I think we got to be better. Now, is that going to translate into wins? Does that mean we're only going to lose by 1 or 2 as opposed to being blown out? Those things are yet to be determined because this team's got to grow and find themselves in a short amount of time. But I did see a lot of great competition. I see guys making, and we'll talk about the personnel a little more detail, but I saw guys competing out there and you can, some certain guys really stuck out. And that's exciting because, let's face it, we haven't had a lot of guys stick out the last several years.
Yeah. Well, Fish, obviously you're not in Tallahassee, but you have your ear to the ground and have multiple sources with near or close to the program. What are your kind of your thoughts coming out of camp?
I've watched some of the videos. The number one thing, I don't care what level, whether it's Pop Warner up to college or pros, the one thing that you can control, no matter how talented you are, is effort. And the last couple years, you have not seen a lot of effort, or the guys have given up when things got difficult. And it seems like they're finally getting that out of their system, and they're giving maximum effort. And if they do that, you can't ask for much more, because they're gonna pull off a couple upsets that they needed to pull off. And I think overall they'll be a better football team. Like you guys talked about, it may not show up in the wins or losses this year, but it's going to show up in the overall play. And that's how they're going to get better players in recruiting as well. The product just being better on the field, looking more efficient, looking like they belong out there. And that's what you want to see, guys that actually care. And it means something. Mark played at Florida State, putting on that helmet. There's got to be a sense of pride of putting on that helmet and putting on that uniform. And the guys the last couple of years haven't deserved to put on that uniform, in my opinion. And if these guys do what they need to do, we'll see a better product on the field in 2021.
Yeah. And I agree with all of you. I think this is a improved football team over what it was a year ago. A couple of things that have stood out to me as we've watched more and more practices is particularly on defense. They look to have hit home runs with all of the transfers. Jermaine Johnson, Kerr Thomas, as you mentioned, Bob, or Jerry, Jarrett Jackson looks like he's coming along finally after being slowed last year. Jamie Robinson at nickel, even Miko Dotson, who we did not get to see a lot of last year, has flashed in camp this year. We got more depth at tight end because of the kid from UCLA, and I can't find, Jordan Wilson. And so I think that, and then Dylan Gibbons is in the starting lineup. That fortifies and strengthens the offensive line. So I think the transfers, and of course I haven't even mentioned Mackenzie Melton. So, but the defensive transfers in particular stand out for me. And I think Keir Thomas has got a chance to have a great year. You mentioned Cortez Andrews. So they did a great job, at least going into the season. What I think is that they've done well in their evaluation of the transfer players. And then the other thing, I've got 5 freshmen that stick out to me, and I don't know that it's ever a good thing that you're playing true freshmen, but they got 5 freshmen that have been very impressive, and either last year, late in the season, during the course of spring practice, and have had decent fall camps and look like they may be contributors on this team to some extent, and probably significantly. Kevin Knowles, Josh Farmer, Shaheen Brown, Josh Burrell, and Malik McLean. So that's just 5 names I'm going to throw out there. But those are some of my takeaways from camp. But I think we're all in agreement that this team is better and should be more competitive than it was a year ago. And listen, as we've said time and time again on these podcasts and on the Osceola, we thought it would be because they got to take advantage of an off season completely, spring practice completely, fall camp completely. And this team is tighter because of going through those off season workouts where you earn respect and trust among teammates. And they've had the chance to spend quality time with their coaches for the first time since Mike Norvell's been here. So I think they'll be better in that regard. Like you guys, we'll see how that translates to the scoreboard and then the win-loss column, but we'll start finding out Sunday night. Now, I want to go quickly in as few words as you can. What equates success in 2021 for you for this FSU football team? And Mark, since you're the only former FSU player on here, I'm going to let you start.
Well, I think a winning record in a bowl game, I think, is pretty realistic. And that's not a given by any stretch. But I think if the right guys, and it's going to start in the quarterback position. If those 2 guys are who we think they are, I think that's very attainable.
Jerry?
I think what Mark said in terms of a winning season, I think you get to 6 wins, you get a bowl game. I think that's a attainable goal at the minimum. I'm looking for the intangibles, and we're seeing them in camp where the coaches hold the players accountable in the games, and that when we have mistakes that we correct them and we don't continue to make them. Those are the things. Like Mark said, I want to see us look efficient in our game day operation.
Bob?
Florida State football needs to be fun again. I think that's going to go a long way for fans. I think fans making this long trip to Tallahassee whether you're from South Florida, Atlanta, elsewhere. Fans want to have fun when they come out to watch the games, and that starts with quarterbacks and efficient offense, but also a defense that gets after it, chases down the other team, and special teams that isn't a liability. I think less the record, but more the product on the field, the organization, how it looks and how it feels, just the fun that the players are having, I think will rub off on the fans, and they'll appreciate the progress of this program.
Fish, I kind of want to ask you the same question in a different vein. What does FSU have to do on this field to equal success on National Signing Day in December and February? They have put together an outstanding class for 2022 thus far. They've got a couple of big name prospects are still going after, particularly two legacies, Marvin Jones Jr. and Julian Armella. What do they have to do on the field to solidify this class and maybe even raise the profile by getting Shade Tree Jr. and Little Zoe?
I think that the process, what you see on the field has to improve. If that improves and the schemes look like they're working, I think that the recruiting will take care of itself. A lot of these kids know that Florida State's not going to win 9-10 games. So they're getting recruited to take Florida State to that next level. I think 6-6 would be a very good season. Getting to a bowl game and having the potential to win a 7th game would really help them out. I think if they could get there, I think their class will hold and they'll have a very good class come National Signing Day.
Yeah. And listen, I agree with just about everything I've heard on here, so I'm not going to belabor the point. I agree. 7 wins for this team would be outstanding. Anything above that, they have far exceeded anything that I expected coming in this year. But I certainly think that this is a better football team and we will see better results in the win-loss column. But I agree with you, Mark, Jerry, Bob, Fish. Bowl game should be the goal, and bowl game should be what they shoot for. And who knows if you get some of those swing games that we'll get into next week after we see this team against Notre Dame. We'll get a little bit more in depth into the ACC schedule. Who knows what might happen, but certainly I agree with you guys. The goal should be bowl and winning record. Now, guys, I do want to go through the depth chart. They released the depth chart for the game. I believe they released it Monday. We were taping on a Wednesday night. Jordan Travis and Mackenzie Melton are listed as co-starters. We have said for the longest time that we thought FSU may use 2 quarterbacks during the season. With the warrior-like mentality of these guys on the field, it's one of those unique situations to me where having 2 good quarterbacks is a good thing, not a bad thing, right? And as we saw last year, Jordan Travis plays really hard, is very physical, and it might help that you have somebody you can slide right in if Jordan comes bumped and bruised. But Jerry and Bob, you guys have been at more practices than I have. Just tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the quarterbacks and what you expect to see from them. I think all 4 of them have looked better and more comfortable in the system.
It might be over.
I think Jordan is throwing the ball better, and I think Mackenzie is a lot more comfortable. What are y'all's takeaways from the quarterbacks?
Well, I'll go first if that's all right. I say 2 good quarterbacks is better than no good quarterbacks. So, and that's what we've had the last few years. So this year, I feel like, Jordan Travis has improved drastically. I didn't think a quarterback could improve as much as he has. And I mean that in the sense that he's throwing the fade and the deep ball with touch, with accuracy. I didn't expect to see that. And then he's making really good decisions. I think he manages the game better than he did a year ago. I don't think he's going to take some of the hits that he took last year. I think he'll find a secondary receiver or get rid of the ball. So I really like what I'm seeing from him. Mackenzie Melton goes without saying. I mean, when he's in there, he has the potential to make a big play at any moment. And so I think we've got 2 good choices, and I think we're going to need them both this year. I just think that the nature of college football today, you're going to have players dinged up, and you're just going to have both to make it through the year.
Yeah, I agree with you with the RPO offense, particularly with Jordan in the game. And then, of course, Mackenzie, he's coming back from a serious injury, and no one's not quite sure how he's going to hold up through a college football season. So, and listen, the other thing I like, at least, Bob, you can speak to this too. What I have seen from all four quarterbacks is, I've watched, when they're having the split practices early in camp, the camaraderie between the quarterbacks seems to be very good. They all like to help each other. They push each other. They joke around and talk to each other. So, sometimes you worry about that causing a chemistry issue. And if we talked about when Hornibrook and Blackman were here as quarterbacks, we felt like it might have divided the locker room. You don't see that with this team. As far as from my perspective, Bob, what have you seen?
I think we said back in December that Mackenzie Melton was going to elevate this team, whether he played it down or not. And so far, he's elevated the quarterback room, and he's pushed everybody to do better, to participate more in strength and conditioning, and to work harder on the practice field in the offseason, all that. I think bottom line is still where we were months and months ago, though. This Florida State team is going to have to get by with a little bit of creativity from the coaching staff, and I think they will do that. They're going to have to use both quarterbacks, have to figure out certain situations where it works. Who knows who's going to start on Sunday? I think this is a pretty beautiful smokescreen by Mike Norvell, making Notre Dame spend a lot of time preparing for two quarterbacks. I think he knows which quarterback he's going with for the majority of the snaps, but I also think he's got some packages in there for that second guy. And we all presume that it's going to be Mackenzie Melton as a starter. Could be the opposite way. It could be Jordan Travis, and there's a couple packages for Mackenzie Melton week one because he's not ready for a full workload. There's a lot we don't know, but I think the creativity and the versatility, Coach Norvell likes that word lately with the quarterbacks. The versatility of those two quarterbacks are going to be used to the advantage of Florida State this fall.
Well, I know this probably will not happen, and I said this yesterday on Front Row Nose, but I hope that both of them enter the game on the first play. I think I think Jordan earned it from what he did for this team last year, and then to watch this miraculous comeback by Mackenzie Melton, very rarely will I ever say I'd like to see two quarterbacks on the field at the same time, but I think it would be kind of a cool moment and then let itself play out from there as the season rolls on. But Mark, you got to see all four quarterbacks in the day you were in town. What did you think about the quarterback situation?
Look, I think Jordan Travis is an electric player. He stood out to me. The one situation I saw, just his playmaking ability, just his confidence, and some of the throws he made. Jerry, you're right. He made drastic improvement throwing the ball. He was exciting to watch. Maybe it's because he was with the first team more the day I was there. I don't know, but. And Milton, I know, is the total package. But to Bob's point, it's been a while since he's played a full football game, and been full contact. So, he may have to ease into it a little bit, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe he goes in there and he's, because of who he is, he's just totally takes it over. But I'm just telling that Travis, to me, right now, he's just an electric player. And the young guys look good too. I mean, we are in a better situation than we've been in since Jameis, honestly. Somebody will rise to the top and something will happen. And that'd be the guy we go with, the hot hand kind of deal. And that's okay too. The bottom line is we got some playmakers at that position. It's been a long time.
Yeah. When both of them are playing their best, they're huge play. I mean, Jordan Travis was one of the most electric players in the ACC last year with the ball in his hands. And Mackenzie Melton's been one of the winningest quarterbacks in recent college football history and thrown for a ton of yards and won a lot of ball games. So I think they're in good hands there. Moving to running back, it looks like running back by committee. You've got Corbin, Treyshawn Ward, Lawrence Toafili, Ja'Kai Douglas, and DJ Williams. All five, were in camp. Guys, Jerry, I'll start with you on the running backs. What were your takeaways from the running back room?
I was talking with Sammy Smith yesterday, and I said, our running back room is much improved, but there's not a Sammy Smith in it. I think each one of those guys you mentioned, Pat, brings a little bit of diversity to the package. I like Corbin because he's a straight ahead runner. When it's 3rd and 3, he's going to go get 3 yards and not try to get 30. And I like him for that. I like a north-south guy. And he's improved. You can see him running. He runs better. He's fully healed now. DJ Williams he's a thick kid who's very difficult to arm tackle. I like him. You mentioned Ja'Kai Douglas. He's a burst guy. And then Toafili has probably the best hands of the group. And he's that guy that I don't want to compare him to an Ampli, but if you picture an Ampli, that's about what he looks like. He's thinner, a little bit more dynamic in terms of a big play potential. But they're all a little different. And what we've seen is a lot of inside runs with them where those guys will get upfield. They'll stick their nose in there. And again, having 4 of them really gives you some luxury there.
Yeah, to your point on Toafili, he's not as big as Amp, obviously, but he does kind of have that slippery, swivel hip kind of ability that Amp did, where he might not have been the fastest guy in the world, but people had a hard time lining him up and getting a square shot on him. That's for sure. That's what we saw out of Lawrence last year. Early on, and when he played against Miami, he showed that ability. Bob, your take on the running backs?
Yeah, I agree with Jerry. I would just say with Toafili, he looks often more like a receiver than a running back. Just the way he moves downfield without the ball, the way he catches it in traffic, secures it, even though he's getting hit. Again, looks more like a receiver in that regard. I think what you'll see with Corbin is, just 2 years removed from that September 2019 torn hamstring. He's at Texas A&M, more confident. The guy, when he hits contact, he's falling forward, he's pushing forward, does not lose yardage. There's not negative plays there. He is your number one back, I think, because he's the best option there. To Jerry's point, he's not a Sammy Smith. He's not a Dalvin Cook. He's not even a Cam Akers, but he is Treyshawn Corbin. I think he's one of your best options for about 15 carries a game. The other thing is, when you're looking for a third running back, the guy who's kind of come out of nowhere has been Treyshawn Ward.
I agree.
I mean, you would think that would have been DJ Williams or maybe Deontay Sheffield. Not going to knock those guys because they've made progress too. But Treyshawn, that lateral movement, if he can run off tackle, he's going to pick up some yards and find some green grass. So I think he's been really a pleasant surprise for them. And Norvell uses 3 backs. Will he use 4? Sure. But it seems that he likes a 3-back rotation at minimum. So look for Ward there for sure.
Yeah, I think Treyshawn Ward is one of the stories of this particular football team so far, even going back to spring practice. He stood out then. You wonder if it was before just because it was spring ball. And then, of course, what we've seen from him fall camp is the ability to change directions. And like you say, all 5 of these guys have a little bit of a complementary skill set. There's not one that's just exactly like the other. So I agree with that. And, mentioned Lawrence Toafili's ability to catch the ball, kind of a good segue into the receiver group. And I think he's a guy that we will see line up in the slot from time to time. We were impressed with some of the receivers. We see some potential in some of the younger receivers, but I think it's the one position group on offense that we'd all agree we would like to see more consistency out of. So, Jerry, I know that you and I, last time we were at practice, you had a steady eye on the receivers. So I'll let you start. Andrew Andrew Parchment has been brought in. He does have some athletic ability that some of the other receivers do not. He's long. He gets off the ball very quickly and gets to full speed quickly. Just give me your thoughts on the group as a whole.
Overall, throughout the camp, I've been frustrated by the number of drops I've seen. We just don't catch the ball as well as you'd like to see your receiver group catch it. Now, that's the negative. I got it out of the way. The guys who have been consistent have been the guys you'd expect to be. Helton has been very consistent.
Had a very good camp. Very good camp.
Very good. McDonald, the tight end, very good camp in terms of catching the football. After that, it gets a little bit hit or miss sometimes. I like the Ontario Wilson has had a good camp. I'm hoping that he continues to progress in the fall throughout the year. You brought up Andrew Parchment. When this camp opened, I was not impressed with Parchment's engagement. He didn't look like he was engaged with his teammates or with the program, and it was very concerning. They had a conversation with him, and overnight it was like somebody flipped the switch on. You saw him talking with his teammates more. He was more engaged. And there's no question that kid has a high ceiling. He's very sudden off the line of scrimmage. He can get deep on people, and he has soft hands. He may have the best hands on that team, possibly. He has the softest hands, I would say. He does not, to steal a quote from you, Pat, his hands are not unfriendly to a football. He catches it well. And so I think we have reason to have hope in Parchment that Malik McLean is going to be a super good player. He's going to be a guy in the future we're all going to just absolutely love. And he's acting like you would expect him to. He's making really good plays. You feel really good about him. And then out of nowhere comes the drop, and it just reminds you he is a freshman.
Yep.
So I think some of it is just concentration and focus. When you get in the ball game, the lights go on. We may see improvement there, but you're not going to be able to have drops against a team like Notre Dame on third down. When the offensive line gets the job done, the ball gets to the receiver, he's got to catch it. And that's my only concern with that position.
Bob, your thought, you've been paying attention to the receivers too. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think we question the dependability overall. It's not just the drops, but it's being in the right place, right time, blocking. Lots of questions there. I think there are candidates. I like Malik McLean a lot. I don't know if he's going to be the guy this year who's going to be a 30-catch type of guy. Jerry likes Kentron Poitier a lot. Still seeing a lot of drops from those two guys. But if you're looking for a first-year guy, a second-year guy who can jump in and be a part of this three-receiver mix, it's those guys. The other thing I'll throw in is, we haven't talked a ton about tight ends, but beyond Cam McDonald, who's going to have to be impactful for this team as a blocker, as a flex tight end, they're going to use a lot of tight ends too. We're going to see a lot of times where there's two or more maybe tight ends on the field at the same time. And that's just going to show the creativity that Norvell and Dillingham bring to the table.
Fish, what are your thoughts on the skill position players?
Well, I think running back, it's just consistency. I think it's going to be running back by committee. I think every game you could have a different leading rusher the entire season. Wide receiver, the young guys are pretty good. It's just the older guys. There's some guys in there that have talent that you'd like to see step up and be more consistent. It's just they haven't done so. I think overall, it's going to be the same during the year. You're going to have some moments where they look great and then other moments where the drops. I think sometimes, though, the drop thing gets a little – you watch college football in general, a lot of teams have a lot of drops. I just think fans, for some reason, they focus on that a lot of times. As long as they're not at key situations on a third and long to move the chains or whatever, I think a lot of that stuff's overblown a little bit. But I think overall their receivers are, solid. You'd like to see some more consistency and one of these guys step up and be the number one guy. I said to someone else off the record about this, that basically they've got a lot of great number threes. They just need somebody to become a number one and be the lead guy. And it's going to be interesting to see who that's going to be this year.
Well, somebody mentioned it earlier about if the receivers have to catch the ball when if the quarterbacks are afforded protection. So, Mark, let's talk about where all the real work is done. Let's talk about the 5 guys up front and what are your expectations? This was a group that was certainly improved in the run game last year. Some of that was Jordan Travis. Some of it was real improvement and just being able to run the ball with the running backs. Struggled with pass protection, in my opinion, in the spring. What are you looking for out of this group in 2021?
Yeah, I'm looking at the depth chart, and the thing that strikes me is we had a lot of guys that played a lot of snaps.
Yep.
And that is something we haven't had in the past. And we have a lot of guys that have played together for at least a year for sure. And continuity, from year to year, and continuity with the same coach and the same language and the same things they're hearing and the same scheme. That can only make them better. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this group. I really am. I love Maurice Smith at center. I think he's an athletic, really, he's a good player. Putting Darius at right tackle and Robert Scott at left. They're big enough. They're long. Darius I said this, I think to you, Pat, he reminds me of Rob Stevenson, from those 90-91 teams. Just really athletic, not the biggest guy, but it's hard to knock him off his feet and get him turned around, And so I think it's a good spot for him at right tackle. And having Dylan Gibbons in there, ahead of Dante Lucas, that keeps that carrot in front of Dante because, Dante, we all know, is really talented, but Dante can also be a head case, right, and lose his cool. He kind of lacked the emotional maturity that you need from a more seasoned player, but he's got talent. And having Dylan come from a program like Notre Dame, where he's been coached hard and he's been in a great scheme, have that competition going at left guard is going to make both those guys better. Because look, he's going to have to play, and then throw in Bavion, who's now his 5th, 6th year, right?
Yeah.
You know what? Under the same guy, under Atkins for 2 years in a row now. Kudos to him for staying and competing and being in there. He's not starting. I can't help but think he's going to be better. So we're going to need all those guys through the course of the year. That's just the nature of offensive line play in this era. Guys get hurt because of the nature of the way, because of the way schemes are these days with these RPOs. There's a lot of guys you got to be careful about going downfield. So there's a lot of standing around sometimes. Right. And that's when guys get hurt, when they're kind of standing there and guys get thrown on their legs and stuff. And you kind of see a lot more these days than you did in my eras. So we're going to need all those guys. And I think we got more depth than we've had since 2013-14, really.
Yeah, I believe we have 3 guys listed on the 2 deep, Dante Lucas, Bavion Johnson, and Brady Scott, that have double-figure starts over the course of their career. And then, of course, I've talked a lot about the short-term pain last year of playing these true freshmen early. Lloyd Willis got some playing time. Obviously, Robert Scott played. Both those guys you think would be much better than they were last year. They've had a year in the weight room, so I agree with you there. And I think this is the difference-making group. It probably is on every football team, but particularly this football team. If they can cut the number of sacks and pressure's down by 25 to 35%, this offense could look totally different than it did a year ago. I don't know what the magic number is on as far as you cut sack numbers and pressure numbers in half or by 25%. But certainly I think if this group exceeds expectation, I think that it could be, maybe then you're talking about this team being a lot more successful than it might be otherwise. So, but yes, that's the first thing.
I'm cautiously optimistic with this offensive line group, and really the offense as a whole. We just got done talking about the skill guys. There's not a home run hitter in that skill group. Take away the quarterbacks. I mean, our biggest home run hitter is 13. And, can Milton make some of these guys better around him? And that's something that apparently he's really good at, right?
Yeah, I mean, somebody's going to have to – they need a couple of guys to step up as legitimate.
Absolutely. And that's the difference between, being kind of good and being elite is we got to get those Dalvin Cooks. We got to get those Cam Akers. We got to get those, great receivers, guys that make plays and score touchdowns. And we don't see that right now. We see a bunch of good guys, but it's going to take which means we got to play mistake-free football. We don't turn the ball over. We stop negative plays. We stay ahead of the chains, and that's going to be the nature of our offense. And that's just the way it is for us right now. Well,
let's move over to the other side of the ball, the defense, and I think based off our conversations, particularly between Bob, Jerry, and myself, we are all very optimistic about a defense that there's no other way to put it, did not have a very good 2020. Obviously, I've already hit on some of the transfers that have helped bring experience and more talent to this defense. But Bob and Jerry, I'm going to start with, Bob, I'll start with you. Just tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the front where we have Jermaine Johnson, Dennis Briggs, Fabian Lovett, and Keir Thomas starting across the front four. And then you've got Fuller, Jackson, Farmer, Cooper, and Cushney as your backups in one form or the other.
And it feels like they've taken depth. They've grown the depth between the transfer portal and who they've developed. It was a pressing need. I mean, they absolutely had to hit the portal to bring in not just productive players, but leaders. And we're hearing, Keir Thomas, maybe more than even Jermaine Johnson, has been a leader there, has been a coach on the field. And I think that's what this group needed, was similar to quarterback, a guy who has been there and done that, especially in the SEC, had to kind of come in and take some young guys under the wing and say, this is what you do here. This is what you do there. This is right technique that you want to use, praising guys, but also constructively criticizing. And I think, frankly, there's nowhere to go but up. I mean, when you're only generating 9 sacks last year and you're giving up about 200 rushing yards a game, you've absolutely got to be better up in that front four. And I think, again, without seeing a scrimmage, without knowing a lot of the things that happen when you're going one-on-one, we think they're going to be better there. We really do. And you get that first experience right out the bat with Notre Dame. I mean, you're going to face one of the best rushing teams you're going to see all year, and it's going to be week 1. So it's a huge test. It's a huge challenge, but I think it's also a good chance to see just how transfers and younger guys have developed together on the field and what does it look like. And we'll find out Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that they've got a chance to be, it's hard to believe that, that FSU will have 3 players on pro football rosters probably by this time tomorrow. Marvin Wilson was waived by the Browns, but the rumor on the NFL Network is that they want to pick him back up once he clears waivers. So you'll have 3 guys from last year's team and on pro football teams. But Fabian Lovett was dominant at times in the spring. I think he could make a great 1-2 punch with Robert Cooper at nose tackle. And then, Jerry, I know that you've mentioned Jarrett Jackson several times. Josh Farmer stands out to me playing behind Dennis Briggs. And I finally got you to be Dennis Briggs believers after 3 years. And listen, the coaches have talked up Dennis, so we know they're seeing something and seeing some of the same potential we saw when he was a true freshman under Willie Taggart. But Jerry, just your quick thoughts on the defensive front.
Yeah, to play off what you just said about Briggs, that move to tackle was great for him. He's very quick for a tackle. I was talking to Cooper today, and Cooper made the point that what Briggs does is, he's gotten better at shedding blockers and chasing the football. And we didn't have that last year. And so I am a big Briggs fan. I think he's in the right position now to make himself an NFL high draft pick. When we were talking about, I've already talked about the defensive line has gotten a lot better, in my opinion. But as I watch the defense, what I'm seeing is football has come down to one-on-one battles, one-on-one matchups, and our defensive backs are winning those. And so is it that your receivers aren't catching the ball like I want them to, and I get discouraged because we're not making catches in those situations? Or is it that our defensive backs are really ahead of our receivers at this point?
Well, and that's a great segue. We'll come back to the linebackers, but that's a great segue to the DBs. I think we've all three been in agreement on this. This looks to be we've based off their resumes coming out of high school. They almost all of them were highly recruited. And it finally seems that they are trying to fix it or have the chance to live up to that potential this year. Jamie Robinson was a great addition from South Carolina, a highly productive player. They finally moved Travis Jay to corner from safety, and he is now a co-starter with Jerry and Jones and will likely start the game. Obviously, Jarvis Brownlee showed great potential last year. And then, Akeem Dent has finally found a home at free safety. And then, you've got Brendan Gant starting at strong safety or buck, and you got two talented freshmen behind him. Bob, give me your thoughts on what you've seen from the secondary.
I think it's easily the deepest position group that Florida State has. And the second team really, really ain't bad. There is a bit of a drop off, honestly, but think about it. Miko Dotson won't start, for example. Yeah, that seems pretty crazy. Shaheen Brown has been nothing short of impressive for a kid who was not an early enrollee. You have to emphasize he came in over the summer and he's picked up things really fast. Sending some thank you cards to Brian Allen for alerting the Florida State staff about a guy like that and what he could do, that he does belong in this program. They have all the pieces. They have the transfer talent. They have the developmental guys. Cautiously optimistic that guys like Jarvis Brownlee and Travis Jay could be future all ACC type corners. Those are guys who are on the right path. This feels like the right group as long as the pass rush is there. If those complementary pieces are working together, this feels like the defensive backfield that has not just been built up through the preseason, but it's legitimately going to deliver in one-on-one matchups throughout the fall.
Well, and listen, and both the defensive front and the defensive backfield need help from the two or three guys that will line up in between those groups, whether FSU's lined up with two linebackers or three linebackers. I think everybody on this call would agree that the linebackers are the big question mark, at least coming out of fall camp, based off what we've seen in fall camp. Amari Gainer's listed as a starter at stud, Kalen DeLoach at middle linebacker, at what would be the will linebacker, and DJ Lundy at what would be the Mike linebacker. Jerry, you love linebackers. I know you've kept an eye on them. What are your thoughts on that linebacker room with Cortez Andrews being added? They just moved Jadarius Green McKnight to will. Stud behind Amari, and then you've got Steven Dix behind DJ Lundy.
Yeah, that room, coming into the camp, as I said earlier in this call, when I look at the defensive front, I look at that front seven, and I thought we were light, both on the interior coming into camp. I thought we were light, and at linebacker. I don't feel that way anymore. I think Gainer is Gainer. He's, what you see is what you get. He's a good player. And how they use him is going to be real interesting now, because I think with Lundy's development, that gives him a lot of flexibility with Gainer. Gainer can be a heck of an edge rusher. And how they choose to use Gainer is going to be interesting. Lundy, I think, is kind of it's what's changed my mind as I watch him. He's a big guy, 246. He's a downhill player, very heavy hands. He manhandles people. And I questioned a little bit, his lateral movement. We needed that big guy in the middle. And then you get another one of those in Cortez Andrews. They're both he's about 250. And, when he comes on a rush, he moves people. He's also very thick and heavy-handed. So I think it just gives you that dynamic we were lacking. Kalen DeLoach is an interesting linebacker. And frankly, I haven't had an opportunity to really fully appreciate him yet. I'm looking forward to seeing how they use him in the Notre Dame game. And then, of course, Dix is he's running with the twos, and I think his football is probably still ahead of him. I don't know how much, he'll get a lot of playing time this year, and I'm interested to watch his development.
Yeah, you mentioned Gainer rushing, and I believe one of the kids rushing, and I think being able to get to the passer is a great accessory to have as a linebacker. But what I think they need to show is their ability to run downhill, contain, stop the run, force, take on blocks, get off blocks, make tackles. Particularly when we'll talk about Notre Dame here in a little bit, but Notre Dame's going to come out and run the inside zone, stretch zone, divide zone, and those linebackers are going to have to take on blockers and make tackles against the run. Nothing else they can do matters if they can't stop the run. And
right.
The linebackers have to be able to stop the run, and it's something we have not seen in Florida State in several seasons, even before.
And previous to the emergence of Dix and Andrews, I didn't think we had that answer.
Yeah, well, listen, I've been impressed with Cortez Andrews, and we've talked about that we thought Kalen DeLoach had some ability even going back to 2 years ago. So, and we know Amari, if they can finally find a home for Amari in a system where they can take advantage of his skill set, and I think we'll see Amari and Kalen and DJ line up all together when they go to a traditional 4-3 base. But yes, I just listen. I think there's some potential there. Like you said, DJ's a thumper. Steven Dix is definitely an in the box middle linebacker. And then you got Jadarius Green McKnight, who's really stood out to the staff. He's at 220 pounds, so he's kind of outgrown the safety position and has a chance to probably be a really good player for him. So but I do want to see the improvement in the linebackers and the playmaking ability show up in the run game as opposed to the pass game. That's all very important that they can do those things, but I do want to see improvement against the run by the linebackers. Mark and Fish, just your overall thoughts on the defense heading into 2021.
I mean, look, modern defense, it's all about substitutions and what's the drop off between that first group and that second group. Because with no huddle offenses and, especially against Notre Dame now, with their renowned running game, what's the drop off between that first group and that second group? So the development of the second group is going to be key for us because, outside of, you look at our defensive ends, the second team guys there, it looks like there's a huge drop off, outside, you're going to get what you get with Robert Cooper, his conditioning going to be good enough to last, and play 35 plays a game. To me, that's going to be the biggest thing.
Fish, what about you?
I just want to see them play old school Florida State football and attack and see 5, 6, 7 guys around the ball carrier and just play aggressive. If you're going to get beat, be aggressive getting beat instead of this like laying off coverage. And I just want to see them play Florida State style football. I don't want to see this passive take bad angles, missed tackles, broken assignments. You want to see less of that and more sound football, but be also aggressive at the same time. So if we could get back to seeing what we're used to from a Florida State defense, I'll be excited.
Yeah, when you say that, Mark, when Fish says that, Mark, it reminds me of old school days when they used to do perfect play over and over. And I think that really helped fortify that mentality. Everybody runs the ball. Everybody runs as hard as they can, or we come back
faster than you can run.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
run faster than you can run. That was
watching you guys struggle through perfect play. It was a tough drill because, I mean, shoot, I think if you were the backside defensive end, you had to run to the furthest cone, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that's right.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, I'm with you, Fish. I'd love to see that. And you're right. Gang tackling and everybody running to the ball. And I remember I've been around a lot of coaches that your ass better be on the film. There better be 11 of you on that tape when they get when they start tightening down that shot from the all 22. All 11 of you better be there. So,
and that's why depth's so important, because if you're going to play with that intensity every play, you have to be able to do it with 2 deep. You can't have the first team guys playing every snap.
Well, I can't. Go ahead, Jerry.
I was going to say 2 things. One is, Norval made that point about how he's working his running backs and other positions in a rotation so that his best guys are good in the fourth quarter, because you can't go the whole game. You're going 70-something plays now. And when you're in a hurry-up offense, you're not getting much rest. So, you got to pace your players so that they do have good legs in the fourth quarter. The second thing I was going to say, this is just a warning, y'all. You're not going to see great tackling in the first game. You're just not going to see it.
I'm not going to see it out of unless you've got elite talent. I'm not sure you'll see it anywhere in college football all season.
Exactly.
I don't want to see pass. I hate to interrupt you, Jerry. I just don't want to see passive football.
No, listen, I agree with you.
Missed tackles and stuff like that are going to happen. It's playing passive and not aggressive and letting, Florida State dictated for a very long time to offenses what they were going to do. They controlled what was going to happen on the defensive side of the ball. And you haven't seen that the last couple of years. And that's what I want to see is, you're going to make mistakes. We realize that the way the game's played now, and I don't care if you're Alabama or you're Florida State or you're any of these teams, even Clemson last year, they gave up a lot of yards, but it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And they can't look disorganized and sloppy on that side of the ball, because I think the defense sets the tone for the whole team. When Florida State has a great defense, it's contagious. It goes over to the offensive side of the ball. And you saw it last year in the North Carolina game. When the defense came to play, the offense, it juiced them up. So I just want to see that more consistent. If we could get more of what we saw in the first half of North Carolina, I think that is what's going to improve this football team overall.
I think a lot of that is a byproduct of not knowing what to do. When you're on the field and you're unsure and you're afraid of making a mistake, that's where a lot of that comes from. I hope that through 20 days or however many days of spring ball and a full fall camp in this scheme, and again, the continuity with coaches, hopefully that can improve. Because
Mark, you know this. But Mark knows this more than anything, and we talked about it before. The one thing that you can control, no matter how talented you are or not, is effort. And if guys are willing to give that effort, give everything they have and on that football field, and I know it's cliche, but it's true. You just haven't seen that on the defensive side of the ball. It's what made Florida State so great for so many years under Mickey Andrews, is that the defense, no matter what, they had sloppy moments. They'd come out in the first half of many games against a Wake Forest and miss tackles, and then Mickey would make his adjustments at the second half and shut them down. But you just want to see that aggressive style Florida State football, and I didn't see it last year. And that I just
haven't seen it for a while.
It didn't look like them last year.
Well, hey, we're going to get a chance to see if we see that on Sunday night, and going to move this along to the next subject matter.
Hey, Pat, before we do, let me go back to a point, and I don't want it to get lost. I agree with Fish that we want to see a more aggressive defense, and I think we will. we've seen schemes in camp that they are more aggressive. What I'm referring to with bad tackling has to do with two things. And we've said this on the show before.
It's the way you practice.
In these camps, you just don't tackle to the ground.
Yeah, you don't.
We don't practice tackling. And the second,
and nobody does.
No, and nobody does. And the reason is you're scared to death of the concussion protocol. And so what you see in practice is thud. Guys not wrapping up and finishing the tackle to the ground. And so what happens in a game, you tend to do what you do in practice. So that's one point I wanted to make. And the other point I wanted to make is when you spread the offense, now almost every tackle is an open field tackle in college football today. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that, and I'm not disagreeing with anything anybody said about aggressive defense, and certainly agree with you on they don't tackle as much as they used to. But also the RPOs have slowed the aggressive. You should still be aggressive and hustle after you understand what's going on. But the RPO offense, and when you're asking a six technique or a defensive end to read the quarterback and take the quarterback or the running back, it does slow down your ability to get four people upfield because somebody's got to take. So I understand what you're saying, Fish, but I do think that the way people try to defend the RPO sometimes does slow down that aggressive mentality. Now, once you recognize you and carry out your responsibility, then it's time to go be aggressive. I do now. Back in the old days, Florida State, Miami, those four guys were coming off the ball, and their only job was to get upfield and get force that line of scrimmage back. That's not everybody plays that way anymore, but I certainly understand where you're coming from. Fish, to keep it with, and we will have a lot of time to talk about this next week after we see how this team performs against Notre Dame. But Fish, last night or today was a big day in recruiting. September 1st calendar hit the calendar, and FSU was able to, and all colleges were able to reach out to 2023 kids for the first time. Let's talk a little bit about recruiting. Is there anything on the 2022 class you have updates on?
It looks like Julian Armella is going to take another visit for this weekend to Florida State. I think it's huge. I know some people don't, if you watched him in the game the other day, just his technique for St. Thomas, and he's got that mean streak.
Dude now.
What?
He's an aggressive dude.
Yeah. Florida State has lacked that. And I think the kid has all the intangibles you want in a great offensive lineman, and he would be a big time get. If they could come out and just show improvement on the O-line this week and show him, hey, listen, you could come here and develop under Coach Atkins, it'll be a great thing, especially on a position of need. To me, we've talked about it. If they sign the guys up front, O-line, D-line, I'll worry about the other parts of the team next year. I want to see them improve those two parts of the team. And a guy like Julian Armella and the Pritchett kid will make a major step forward, and both of them are supposed to be in this weekend for the game. So,
yeah, he's a real deal. I watched him play on television. Jerry, you were with me. We sat there and watched it at Jim and Milt's, and the guy he was playing against was no slouch.
Yeah, he's playing against the number one DN in the country
and getting after him. So, any updates on our favorite Shade Tree Jr.?
He's been quiet with his recruitment. I think we've talked about it all along. He's going to take this thing till the very end. But unless something crazy happens, I just can't imagine him ending up anywhere other than Florida State. To me, he's the single most, outside of like their O-line recruiting and quarterback, just from a PR standpoint, I think he's the single most important recruit in their class.
Yeah, I say it every time. I watched JPP up close. Jason Pierre-Paul at USF. He was with us for one season and one of the most athletically gifted football players I've ever been around. I did not see him in high school, but when I watched Marvin Jones Jr. high school tape, the guy that pops in my head is JPP or Javon Curse for that matter.
Hey, Fish, who do you think the lead is for Armello and for Jones?
Jones is definitely FSU. Right now, LSU's a team for our Mello. The longer the Armello thing goes on, I think the better it helps Florida State, because I think he's really good old lineman. But I think a lot of these kids some of these other teams may have rated a higher than him, that he could end up slipping to them at the end if they're just patient. The longer he waits, the better it is for them.
He took his official to LSU already, right?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
I think he did.
All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, Alumni Hall, and we will come back with a very quick Notre Dame preview and some final thoughts as FSU heads into the 2021 season opener.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store, and Osceola subscribers get 20% off in store and online with their digital membership cards. Alumni Hall.
Welcome back to the Osceola Seminole Sidelines podcast presented by Alumni Hall. Well, guys, you want a big game to start the season. That's what we've got in Doak Campbell Stadium on Sunday night. The 7th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish are coming into town off a 2020 college football playoff appearance. And it's going to be an exciting time, as we mentioned on the forefront of the front part of this podcast. At a crowd of 70,000 thereabouts is expected. It will be the first time this FSU football team has played in front of a home crowd at capacity since November of 2019, and it should be a great night for football. Notre Dame's coming in here ranked 7th in the nation in one poll and 9th in the other. Mark and I have both had a chance to watch their spring game. They are replacing almost every starter on offense, with the exception of a running back, Kyron Williams, who's one of the best in the nation, and of course Jarrett Patterson, who was honorable mention All-American, who will line up somewhere on their offensive line, probably center or guard, but he will line up for the Irish. But they replaced Ian Book, the all-time winningest quarterback in Notre Dame history, who had 30 career victories, with Jack Cohen from Wisconsin transfer. First of all, Brian Kelly has the Irish rolling right now. They have had 4 consecutive 10-win seasons. They have not done that, in a long, long time. The last time they had 3 consecutive winning seasons before this was from 1991 through 1993 with Lou Holtz, and he has won 5 of 6, had 5 of the last 6 seasons at 10 wins or more. And he did this, and his last time that happened was with Lou Holtz from 88 to 93. So what Brian Kelly is doing is he's got this Irish rolling, and I think we're going to find out whether they're reloading or rebuilding with this particular team. But Mark, Jack Cohen is going to be the quarterback. He was a very efficient quarterback at Wisconsin. His last full-time season was 2019. He led them to, I believe, a Rose Bowl, but certainly a big bowl, a New Year's Six bowl. Was beat out last year and transferred to Notre Dame. We both watched him on tape. What are your thoughts on Jack Cohen, the quarterback for Notre Dame?
Yeah, I think he used the right word, efficient. The little bit I watched, he can throw the ball. He can put it in some good spots. Threw a pretty decent deep ball. I think the key to him is going to be to take away his first read, where he wants to go with it, and make him shift around, look around, because he's new to the offense. Will there be some indecision there? I saw him a couple of times when he wasn't there. He kind of looked, he made a couple questionable throws. I think that'll be a good key for him, for us to defending him. But overall, look, what's the quarterback's best friend? A great running game, and I think you can rest assured they're going to challenge us running the football, and they're going to commit to it. I think that obviously that's going to be a key. We get to make it difficult for them to run the ball, put them in a situation where you take away his first read, and we'll have a shot.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the spring game was a little bit misleading as far as what they're going to try to do, in particular in this game, based off of last year's success. But they threw the ball 2 times for every 1 time they ran the ball in the spring game, at least the first team offense for Notre Dame. And I think that was because Brian Kelly wanted to see what he had in Cone. They ran a lot of 10 personnel, probably 11 personnel with some 10 personnel set formations, and then some 21 personnel, which I think could create some problems for anybody they play based on the running backs they have. But yeah, my notes: strong arm, quick release, decides where to go with the ball very quickly. He's not as mobile as Ian Book by any stretch of the imagination. He's got good pocket awareness, but he's not going to be a guy that's going to break off a 15 or 20-yard run when protection breaks down. Ian Book ran for over 1,500 yards in his career. I would be shocked if Jack Cohen ran for 15 yards in a game this year. He had 6 rushes for minus 12 yards in that game. So obviously Notre Dame's first team offensive line gave up some sacks. And, let's talk a little bit about that offensive line. They lost 4 guys off that starting offensive line that I believe won the Joe Moore Award, if I'm not mistaken, which is given to the nation's best offensive line in college football. If they didn't win it, they were a finalist for it for sure. But they do have an honorable mention All-American coming back in Jarrett Patterson. And obviously they won the what's my guy from Marshall's name? I can't remember.
Kane Madden.
Yeah, they won the Kane Madden sweepstakes. They got him over Florida State. I sure would have liked to see Kane and Garnet Gold on Saturday night, but he was a second-team All-American. So it's not often that you lose an All-American and replace him with All-American right off the bat. So what were your thoughts on what you saw from the offensive line in the spring game?
Yeah, they got a little work to do. I mean, it wasn't last year's offensive line, but they are well coached and well drilled, and they got a great scheme. So, if there's maybe any modicum of help, or hope rather, it's in that. Can we challenge? Do we have the personnel to challenge them and challenge their scheme? That's what it's going to come down to. But I mean, they're going to be a work in progress, just like we are.
Yeah, listen, if you can get to Cone and take advantage of the inexperiences of this offensive line, although several of them have played in games, big games, as backups over the course of their career. But if you can get to Cone and somehow get it, and I'm not saying hurt him. You can't say that anymore in football. There used to be a time when you could say you want to put the opposing quarterback out of the game, but if they can make him struggle, where Brian Kelly wants to make a change or something were to happen, their next 2 quarterbacks, Drew Pine and I can't remember the true freshman's name. They've only combined thrown 3 passes in college football. So maybe you can take advantage of that, frustrate the quarterback, frustrate Brian Kelly, and maybe get the second teamer in there. But yeah, I'm with you. I thought their offensive line was solid in the spring. I didn't think it was quite as good as what it was the previous last year, but they look like the way I put it is they've got guys that fit what they do and can do what they ask their offensive line to do. They're not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. They recruited that in the 12th year of the program. They got guys. They're recruiting guys that know what they could do, but certainly there's inexperience there. Hopefully Florida State can take advantage of that. Now, talking about the running game, where you see a lot of divide zone, inside zone, stretch zone, some misdirection. They did run some 21 personnel, and they've got Kyron Williams coming back, who was the ACC Rookie of the Year last year, ironically, and they're not in the ACC this year, obviously, but they did join us last year for one season at ACC. He had over 1,100 yards, and then his backup, Chris Tyree, is no slouch. He ran for 496 yards on 73 carries and might be just as elusive and even faster than Kyron Williams. And then, of course, you've got Sebo Flemister, who also ran for almost 300 yards last year. So they've got about 1,700 yards, if not more than that, coming back in rushing offense. What are your thoughts on Kyron Williams and Chris Tyree?
Yeah, those guys they're hard runners. They're efficient runners. They can hit a home run. I mean, it's a tough it's a tough road to hoe for us, no question. And I think the key, obviously, is don't let them get started. There's going to be a point in the game where they're going to decide we got to string together a couple first downs, and we're going to do it, jamming the ball down your throat. And they're going to scheme for the running game, and our ability to answer that is going to be the key to the game. Can we look? It's going to be emotional. This game is going to be so emotional starting out. I mean, just with all the stuff that's gone on in the last couple of weeks, full stadium, Labor Day, all that. I'll be in tears when this thing starts. There's no doubt, right? I mean, can we ride that emotion? Kind of like North Carolina, get ahead quick. Quick strike somewhere down the line. Miss some big plays and then hold on for dear lives, because when it gets late in the game, that's going to be the challenge. And can we answer that challenge?
Yeah, and listen, I'd like to see Florida State be able to shut down that running game and force Notre Dame to pass the ball. Their three receivers listed on as first teamers on their depth chart had a combined 32 catches last year. Their starting tight end, who's got a chance to be a really, really good player, Mike Meyer, had more. He had more by himself last year than they did. In fact, I believe Meyer was the leading receiver on the team, or at least the second leading receiver. So, they have inexperienced receivers. We have what we think is a talented secondary. Maybe we can afford to play some man coverage against those guys. We'll see what happens, and shut down the run game. But that may be somewhere where they have a deficiency that they may not be able to overcome. But the tight end is very, very good. They actually held him out of the spring game that I watched. But I think they're going to be good on offense. They lost so many people, though, Mark. I don't know if they can be quite as good as they were, but that is a talented running back room. And I think the key of the game, and I think everybody on this call will agree, is that FSU has to find a way to limit the success that Notre Dame has on that in the run, and force Cone, put some pressure on him mentally. Because it put the game on his shoulders type of thing, and see what happens. And then, of course, on defense, they have a new coordinator, Marcus Freeman, who spent 4 years at Cincinnati. A lot of what they did, Mark, in the spring was a lot of four-man front, although Cincinnati has used with Freeman some odd front alignments and odd front principles over the course of his time there. What do you expect to see from the Notre Dame defense?
Yeah, what I saw in the spring game, I saw a lot of linebackers standing that four-man line with linebackers standing in the A gaps, and I saw a lot of that. Yeah. So they're going to give you some looks, and for our ability to discern pressure or not pressure and handle the stunning out of some of those looks is going to be key. I think you're going to see, a lot of the same looks, but different things out of them. And so, they look fairly athletic. I mean, they're not, I don't think they're Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson talent.
No, I agree with you on that.
I think, but they are soundly coached. I mean, you see them take angles, you see them play square, you see them, set the edge, you see them do the things the defenses do. Do we have enough guys to make plays, and can we protect the quarterback? And they're going to be solid. They're going to be solid.
And I think they're very solid up front on the defensive line. They're deep on the defensive front. They've got a bunch of players that have played a bunch of football for them. But Hanish, the nose tackle, and I'm going to screw up this name, Tagliavola Amasa, who did not play in the spring game, has 20 starts. Hanish has 25. Foskey, who's a very talented defensive end, played in all 12 games last year, and they've got some depth behind those guys. They've got a very productive middle linebacker. He's back. He was their second leading tackler on the team. White had 23 starts. The outside linebackers are not quite as experienced, although Kaiser has some athletic ability at their Sam Rover position. And then really the best player on their defense is probably their free safety, Kyle Hamilton, who led the team last year with 63 tackles and is probably going to be has the potential to be an NFL first-round draft pick. But I agree with you. Solid defense.
Look, they're going to be physical. Yep. They're going to try to make it a fist fight. And are we up for a fist fight? And and that's what it comes down to. I am. I hope they are.
Yeah, listen, I think and going back and to get away from the schematics and the personnel breakdown, you mentioned it as we got into this Sunday night. I think Florida State's catching Notre Dame at the right time. They've got 5 starters back on defense, 6 starters back on defense. If you want to count who actually started last year, 8 on the entire team. So 8 returning starters, although there's a lot of guys that played. But, this is that for a lot of these guys, it's going to be the pressures. When you're a backup sometimes, especially when you're playing on a 10-2 team, when you go in, there's only personal pressure to perform. The game's not on the line anymore. These guys are going to be the guys that are going to have to make it happen. So I've said all summer that if you were ever going to catch Notre Dame on your schedule, there's no better time to catch them the first week of the season at night in Doak Campbell Stadium, in front of a crowd that has not been to a game since 2019. So we'll see.
Jerry, let me ask you this. Is it going to be a hot, sticky night?
It's always hot and sticky in August.
Tallahassee, Florida.
It's going to be jungle hot.
We need another like one of those Michigan State 1988 games where they stopped in the second quarter.
The fact that they had heat warnings for 4 practices.
Oh, for 4, huh? 4 whole practices.
Heat warnings for 29 practices. So.
Not to bring up a bad memory, but I can remember us failing in the heat against Boise State 2 years ago. There was a hydration problem. Remember that?
Yeah, that was.
I do remember that. Hydration.
We won't have that problem this year. I can tell you.
Call it H2 Knoll. That was the H2 Knoll days with Coach Taggart, and that I still remember that press conference that Monday very vividly, and I'm glad we're putting that behind us. But no, listen, the Florida State is playing a very, very good football team on Sunday night. They're a very solid program. The fact that when I went back and looked at the spread, it's only 7.5. They keep those bright lights on Vegas for a reason, because they're raking all that money. So if it's 7.5, a night game, I think Tallahassee gives you even makes it less than that. I mean, do you guys agree with that? If this crowd gets behind us, we stay in the game early.
Like I said, it's going to be emotional, early on. And, when that emotion wanes and it really comes down to playing football, how are we mentally and emotionally at that point? Because let me tell you something, being that emotional early in a game takes energy.
It does.
You get really spent a lot faster when you're whipped up into a frenzy for the first quarter.
Well, listen, they're going to be so geeked up when they come out on that field.
Oh gosh, like I said,
it's going to be insane. I mean, that atmosphere is going to. We have not. All of us are going to be geeked up. I mean, you know what song I've had going in my head all week since every time I think about going to the stadium? In the Air Tonight.
In the Air Tonight, absolutely. I'm playing it all day Sunday.
It's been in my head all week.
I'm gonna make sure. I'm gonna ask the preacher if he played in church.
He may. He might.
He's a Florida State graduate. He might.
He's probably heard it a time or two then. But hey, guys, it's been one of the quickest off seasons I can remember. It really has, and I know that has a lot to do with the success of basketball and softball and soccer. All the spring sports. I threw soccer into spring. It's a fall sport. But anyway, I am so excited about football season. I know you guys are too. I think we're excited to not only see what happens on Sunday night, but about the development of this team and probably even further this program under Mike Norvell. And I think we all agree that, he's pushed all the right buttons this offseason with the camps, not only the youth camps, but the high school camps, the mega camp, and obviously we saw some things coming out of fall camp that we all liked. I think we all understand that there's some realities, that there's some questions that have to be answered as this team moves forward. But certainly looking forward to talking Florida State football with you guys every week. I know it's a passion for all of us, and I appreciate you guys jumping on. Any final thoughts from any of you as we get ready to shut this thing down?
Let's tee it up, baby.
Well, in addition to the game itself being a big event, they've added the all these recognition of Coach Bowden on Sunday. So we're going to have a flyover. We'll have Coach Bowden's signature and hat logo on the field. We'll have it on within the stadium. They'll be showing clips throughout the game of some of Bowden's biggest moments. It's going to be a very, very emotional evening for everybody there. Fortunately, the players don't see all that stuff, but those of us that are watching that type of thing, it'll be emotional.
Yep, I've got my old school 1985 FSU hat ready to go. It's an old wool hat. I've worn it once. I worn it the day Coach Bowden passed away. I wore it to practice. The only time I've worked as a member of the media that I've worn anything garnet and gold to a Florida State event. And I think I'll probably wear it on Sunday night, at least outside the stadium, to honor him. But yeah, it's going to be strange. It'll be the first time since 1976 that Coach Bowden has not been around for a Florida State football game. Is it 1970? Am I right on 1976? But yeah, but it'll be, hopefully he'll be honored the right way. And, it'll certainly be something that we'll all remember being at this game. But yeah, I think it's going to be a very fun football season. And I'm glad to have the opportunity to share it with you three guys for the third consecutive year. And look forward to taping our podcast on Monday night coming out of the Notre Dame game. And hopefully we'll have a lot of good stuff to talk about. But go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mark, I just researched the forecast for Monday. And we've got 90's the high, the low is 72. There's a 40% chance of rain during the day,
yes,
and 30% at night.
Need a nice shower right about 3 o'clock.
So that steam comes up.
Just get it nice and
sauna, boys. It's going to be a sauna. Good news is we're used to it. They're not. And it doesn't hurt to have some advantages that neither team can, or some advantage that neither team can control. So
exactly,
I'll take it. I'll take that and a few turnovers in the ball game to go Florida State's way.
Yep.
I'm with you.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. I want to thank our Osceola Seminole Sidelines listeners and our Osceola subscribers for tuning in, and we'll be with you every week this season, and hope that we have a great 2021 football season to talk about, and look forward to catching everybody on Monday night. Y'all have a great one.
Go Noles.
This has been another edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. To subscribe to the Osceola, go to theosceola.com. Go Noles!